My name is Drake Bell. Brian and I became really close, a lot of the same interests. Looking back, I think that was probably a little calculated.
Yes, that was likely calculated because that's what's called grooming behavior, and we'll sadly notice more of that as we continue.
I was always within eye distance, somewhere where I could always keep my eyes on Drake. And unfortunately, I started seeing Brian start to just hang around Drake too much.
That close proximity behavior is very common for someone who is physically interested in another, and Drake's father was very suspicious of Brian Peck. However, a big part of their grooming process is sadly isolation, which we'll notice soon.
What are you doing? Drake can put that on himself, put his arm around his waist, put his hand up on his shoulder and kind of run it down his arm. And this would happen routinely.
That is a major red flag and indicates grooming behavior where Brian was attempting to get Drake to psychologically feel used to his closeness and physicality. And Drake's father was spot on with his concerns.
I saw this video of Brian Peck on Growing Pains with Leonardo DiCaprio, grabbing his shoulder, running across him and going down his arm. That's the kind of behavior I saw him with my son.
Now it probably makes you wonder, did Brian do the same things he did to Drake to Leonardo DiCaprio too?
I don't have a good feeling. And she goes, oh, well, I don't know if you knew it or not, but he's gay. Maybe you're just homophobic and you just don't understand he's a touchy-feely guy.
False. That has nothing to do with it. For example, if an adult woman was doing the same thing to your young son, you would probably still have issue with it. Sexual preference has nothing to do with inappropriate touching. However, the staff was probably friends with Brian and could not think that their friend was up to no good due to their cognitive dissonance. This is the psychological discomfort when a person feels conflicting beliefs, attitudes, or values. To reduce this discomfort, a person may modify their understanding of their friend's actions to align the discrepancy by using denial, rationalization, minimization, selective attention, and reinterpretation. In other words, we naturally don't like when things don't make sense. Therefore, we subconsciously distort reality to simplify and make sense of our world, biasly favoring what we already know and want to believe.
In hindsight, I should have been able to see, but as a kid, you have no clue.
Basically, children don't have the life experience to know the red flags of what to look out for, and they often trust that the adults they know are not going to do anything that would harm them. Also, many times the attention they get from the adults may make them feel special.
But my dad saw it a mile away.
Therefore, it is up to us adults around the child to recognize those initial grooming behaviors and to stop it from progressing.
Who pops up? Brian Peck. Who pops up? Brian's friends. And they're following Drake all through the Strawberry Festival. And I'm just going, what is this?
I think Brian got a sense that my dad was on the watch. And so he started to really drive a wedge between my dad and me.
They may first try and build trust of the suspicious adult, and if that doesn't work, they may sadly attempt to eliminate the adult from the child's life so they can have unfettered access to that child. Attempting to isolate them from the suspicious party is a major grooming behavior to watch out for.
Coming from someone like Brian, I was believing it because he's been in this business for so long and he must know more than us. Started getting into my mom's mind. It was like an army against my dad.
Phone call from his mom saying Drake doesn't want you to be his manager anymore.
And that was apparently all Brian's doing so he can sadly have full access to Drake. It would not surprise me if Brian also became good friends with Drake's mom, not only to remove Drake's dad, but for Drake's mom to trust Brian so Brian could sadly achieve his desired access to Drake.
Say, hey, me and my friends are going to Disneyland. Brian would come and pick me up for auditions. Worked his way into every aspect of my life. Everything changed with Brian one morning. I knew that my life was going to be absolutely, completely different from that point on.
It's very sad. Personally, I would never let any adult be alone with my child. And if they had to be alone, there better be security cameras. As you can imagine, in my field, I know too much about what could happen and how detrimental it is for a child if it were to happen, which we'll discuss more about that soon.
Somehow ended up back at Brian's house. It just got worse and worse.
What Drake is sadly discussing is what's called escalation. They may apologize.
He's so apologetic. Oh, this will never happen again. I'm so sorry. You know, that I don't know what got into me.
But it usually sadly gets worse and worse and worse.
I didn't know how to process it. Led to a lot of self-destruction, alcohol abuse, substance abuse.
But why is that the case? It's a psychological coping mechanism to the trauma response of feeling fear, shame, guilt, and powerlessness. Therefore, alcohol and drugs are often used as self-medication to alleviate anxiety, depression, nightmares, and flashbacks. Alcohol and substance use may become ingrained as maladaptive coping patterns that victims rely on to manage their emotions. These patterns may persist into adulthood even after the immediate trauma has subsided.
There was no therapy and was left to my own devices. which at that age probably isn't the best thing.
It's really a sad story. He was all alone in this and didn't know how else to cope with his trauma, so he self-medicated because he didn't know how else to make the pain he was experiencing go away.
I didn't need to have dogs lick the peanut butter off. Jack didn't need to be submerged in a pool of worms. Having to watch your fellow castmates tortured.
Yes, doing those challenges as a child often feels like torture, but it doesn't feel as much like torture as an adult in TV shows like Fear Factor.
People are brought here from all around the country for one reason: stare fear in the eye and compete to win $50,000.
And yes, that was when Joe Rogan had hair. Do you know why that's the case? Why it may feel like torture for a child, but maybe not adults? It's because children are doing those challenges upon the direction, trust, supervision, and encouragement from adults, and children are inherently at a massive power disadvantage, lacking the understanding, capacity, and capability to properly decline. When an adult doesn't want to do a fear challenge, they know they can quit at any time. However, when a child does a fear challenge like this by the direction of adults, they feel forced into it. When an adult does a fear challenge, they get paid. They know they are doing the challenge for money. When a child does one of those fear challenges, the parent gets paid for the child going through that. And hopefully the parent doesn't pocket all the money for themselves. Also, children's brains are still developing, and their cognitive abilities, emotional regulation skills, and understanding of risk and danger are not fully developed. As a result, they have difficulty processing and even coping with fear-inducing experiences, leading to heightened distress and vulnerability, even possibly developing PTSD. Younger children are more likely to laugh with a laugh track because they are highly influenced by social cues. When they hear others laughing, whether it's real or simulated through a laugh track, they are psychologically more inclined to join in and laugh as well, even if they don't fully understand the joke. Therefore, Nickelodeon basically found out that younger children will laugh at virtually anything if a laugh track is there.
Dan Schneider is obsessed with feet. Check this out.
Strange things amuse Dan, and that was just one of the things he thought was funny.
So the real question is why the adult humor if they were going to laugh and be entertained by anything?
Want to get slapped with a sausage? There's a joke about being on the wood.
My character can't get it open, squirting onto Jamie's face.
I think Dan Schneider wanted to be personally entertained by his own perverted comedy, and there was probably also something else behind it too. But why do you think Dan Schneider constantly made suggestive humor?
I'm thirsty. Give up the juice.
The tortured genius. If a guy's a total piece of he must be so good at his job.
Have you ever heard of the tortured genius theory? It suggests that creative people, such as artists, writers, or musicians, may experience heightened emotional intensity or psychological distress, which fuels their creative output. This suggests that suffering trauma or mental illness may be intertwined with creativity. I personally think Dan Schneider was less of a creative genius and just a sick man.